Chapter 773. Melinda did not know why. This was the person she was most afraid of, but when she heard him say that, she felt strangely at ease. Blushing, Melinda didn't have time to think about anything else when she felt a warm breath on her ear. Instinctively, she shrank her neck to avoid it, but Carter's hand was already on her face. He gently pulled her into his embrace, and the side of her face was pressed against his chest. His heart was beating wildly. He didn't know if it was because he was worried that he had accidentally hurt her, or because she was willing to be so close to him. He only knew that when he saw her blush, his body reacted faster than his brain. He wanted to hug her. He really just wanted to hug her. Melinda did not struggle or resist. She seemed to be in a daze and allowed Carter to hug her for a long time. Fei Rui was unhappy and wanted to separate them, but was held back by Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head lightly. "Isn't it good to have another reliable person to protect her with you?" Fei Rui was stunned for a moment. He carefully observed Carter's and Melinda's expressions before slowly withdrawing his strength and turning to leave. After hugging for a long time, Carter released Melinda. It was not that he had enough, but he did not dare to ask for more. He wanted to hug her and never let go. But if he hugged her any longer, she would angrily push him away. He was prepared to be scolded by Melinda, but his careful gaze met Melinda's momentary disappointment. Maybe she liked his hug. Stunned for a moment, Carter immediately hugged Melinda back into his arms. He would hug her like this until the end of time. However, Melinda had already regained her senses from that momentary chill. She pushed Carter away and walked to Gu Mingming's side. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. She hid behind Gu Mingming with her head lowered, clearly still resisting Carter. Gu Mingming pretended not to see anything. She pulled Melinda along and chatted happily. She helped Melinda put on the pearl earrings and sighed sincerely. He pulled Melinda to the beach and asked her to look at the reflection in the water to see if she was satisfied with the result. However, Melinda's eyes subconsciously peeked at Carter through the reflection in the water. Gu Mingming pulled Melinda back and pretended to be nonchalant. "Carter, what do you think of this earring? Are you a good match for Melinda?" Carter's eyes were still on Melinda's face. Meeting her cautious and expectant gaze, Carter smiled bashfully and dotingly. Very beautiful, very beautiful." Gu Mingming clearly saw that Melinda's face had turned red, but she refused to let it go. "Then is the earring prettier or Melinda prettier? You have to speak clearly." Kate's expression did not change. "Melinda is beautiful. She is the most beautiful female in the world. She is the essence of all things beautiful." Gu Mingming smiled and nodded, then pretended to sigh in pity. "What a pity there's only one. If only I could find another pearl that looks exactly the same to make a pair." Carter did not say a word, but Gu Mingming recognized his expression. It was the expression Elvis and Leah had every time she said something unintentionally, and Elvis and Leah secretly remembered it. She believed that even if Carter had to turn the entire ocean upside down, he would definitely find another pearl that was exactly the same for Melinda. However, he would leave the future to time. Chapter 774. After resting for 2 days, Fei Rui and Carter brought their tribesmen to fetch Gu Mingming to the Forbidden Abyss on the morning of the 3rd day. Compared to the first time they entered the sea, it was a little more extravagant this time. Gu Mingming was wrapped up in Wabiai's snake tail, feeling like an emperor leading his officials on a tour with a divine beast. Although this divine beast looked like a piece of tea soaked in water, but she endured it. After all, there were many fishes behind them and it looked rather intimidating. Elvis and Leah also wanted to follow but were rejected by Gu Mingming. Although the mermaid tribe's air bubble could allow them to breathe underwater, if they met with any accident and the air bubble burst, they would definitely die at that depth. Moreover, even if the air bubble was fine, the water pressure at the bottom of the sea was also a serious problem. Beasts who lived on land for a long time would be half dead just by going down. Why was Gu Mingming fine? Nonsense, she had Snake's beast king powers and the kiss of the beast deity from her lonely father. Of course she would be fine. When they neared the so-called Forbidden Abyss, Gu Mingming finally understood why Fei Rui said the messenger of the beast deity had to come personally. It was clearly a flowing sea, but it was filled with a thick layer of poison. It was as if the poison was continuously seeping out from the depths of the sea, so thick that even the sea could not melt it. Fei Rui and the rest swam to this point, and could no longer go any nearer. Their expressions were solemn as if they were suffocating. Gu Mengmeng didn't want to force them, so she asked them to retreat. She and Wabiai could go down alone. Fei Rui was worried, but he also knew that with his powers he would only cause more trouble if he went down. So he instructed Gu Mengmeng not to force herself, and to retreat if she felt something was wrong. She must not force herself. Gu Mengmeng made a reassuring gesture, and asked them to retreat further, and not be affected by the poison. Fei Rui and Carter said that they would meet her at the entrance and wait for her to come out. Gu Mengmeng didn't reject them. She just led Wabiai into the deepest part of the pitch-black darkness without any source of light. Gu Mengmeng had inherited Elvis's night vision, so her fear of the dark had already been reduced to its lowest point. But the absolute darkness and the absolute silence still gave her a creepy feeling of uneasiness. Gu Mengmeng instinctively grasped Wabiai's hand, but Wabiai said irritatingly, "Don't you know how strong your claws are? If you break my arm later, you can do it yourself if you encounter any danger." It had to be said that Wabiai's words effectively dispelled Gu Mengmeng's fear. That's right, in the entire beast world, she was already the strongest among the strong. If she met with any danger, she could just release her beast pressure and suppress it. If it was some kind of demon or ghost, didn't she have a lonely old man's father to back her up? F***ck. She had someone on top of her too, okay? He was a legitimate second-generation immortal. Because of Snake's tear of the beast deity, Gu Mengmeng's body was now immune to all poisons, because there was nothing more poisonous than the blood in her body. Fighting poison with poison, it was only natural that the weaker side would be completely devoured. However, Wabiai clearly did not possess such strength. The deeper he went, the denser the poisonous fog became. Wabiai was starting to feel a little powerless. Gu Mengmeng didn't want Wabiai in front of her, so she asked him to return and wait with Fei Rui and the rest. But Wabiai said, "If I leave you alone, you can forget about raising your head in front of him for the rest of your life." Digression. Yeah, today's update is over. Chapter 775. Gu Mengmeng wanted to say that there was no need to compete in such a place. She had the protection of the kiss of the beast deity, and her abilities were not affected in the water. Even without Wabiai, it would not be a big problem. But Gu Mengmeng also knew that males had their own pride and dignity. Sometimes, they would view certain things as more important than their own lives. She did not hesitate too much because any further hesitation would only cause Wabiai more pain and suffering. Nodding, Gu Mengmeng said, "If you can't hold on, go back immediately. I will not blame you and neither will Snake. On the contrary, if anything happens to you, I will not be able to answer to Snake." Wabiai tucked Gu Mengmeng under his armpit and charged into the abyss in his half-beast form. He raised his speed to the maximum, clearly wanting to end the battle as soon as possible. His tightly furrowed brows and a solemn expression that she had never seen before proved that his current condition was not optimistic. But he still gritted his teeth and said, "I don't need you to answer to him about my life." In the poisonous fog in the deep sea, there was nothing but flowing water. Wabiai's speed was so fast that Gu Mengmeng could only feel the poisonous fog whizzing past her ears. Her body was sinking rapidly. But how long did she sink? How deep and how far did she sink? How long did she sink? Gu Mengmeng could not be bothered. But when Wabiai's body finally stopped, Gu Mengmeng could clearly see that the scales on his tail had already been corroded by the poisonous fog, revealing the flesh underneath. There were also many festering spots on his chest. It was not fatal, but it was still a ghastly sight. Puffed. Wabiai spat out a mouthful of saliva that was mixed with blood. He raised his hand to wipe it off and laughed as though he did not know his limits. "You want to compete in poison with me? In this life only Snake is more poisonous than me." Seeing his stubborn look, Gu Mengmeng retracted her hand that was about to support him. Sometimes, she had to know how to hold back her pity to save a man's face. Gu Mengmeng smiled and patted the parts of Wabiai's body that were still intact. "Not bad. I thought you couldn't hold on any longer. TSK, the only one who can kill me in this world has already been destroyed by you. Wabi said with unclear emotions before surveying the surroundings. The poisonous fog hovered above their heads like a thick, dark cloud, while the area under the poisonous fog was unbelievably clean. Gu Mengmeng consciously sucked in a mouthful of seawater and swallowed it, only to realize that it was not salty. In other words, the part under the poisonous fog was not seawater but freshwater, and it was the kind of freshwater that was similar to mineral water. This was very strange. Gu Mengmeng did not know what kind of topography would cause such a situation to occur. Could it be related to the poisonous fog? However, Gu Mengmeng did not have much interest in surveying the geography of the seabed. She just walked along the path that was paved with mud from the seabed. Speaking of which, it was very strange. There was clearly still water below, but there was no water flowing. It was clearly the same seabed mud, but there was a forest path that formed a sharp contrast with the mud beside it, as if it was guiding her forward. After taking 2 steps, Gu Mengmeng realized something was wrong. The speed at which her feet sank was getting faster and faster, but it was getting harder and harder to pull out. Underwater swamp? Gu Mengmeng frowned and wanted to swim across the sky. Chapter 776. Gu Mengmeng tried to walk around from the side of the small path, but she realized that the suction force from the side was stronger. She had just placed her feet lightly on the ground when there was already a force sucking her in, almost sucking her in. Wabi used his snake tail to lift Gu Mengmeng up onto his head. He had already transformed into his original form. The huge snake head was as big as a train and Gu Mengmeng sat on it stably. The thick snake body slithered along the path like a fish in water. Gu Mengmeng giggled. Luckily Wabi had insisted on coming down with her. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to get down. Little shit, I didn't expect you to be so reliable. Gu Mengmeng patted Wabi's head. Wabi stuck out his tongue and said to Gu Mengmeng in snake language, "If you call me little shit again, do you believe I won't throw you into the mud?" Gu Mengmeng shrugged. "I don't believe you." Wabi gritted his teeth and didn't reply. Because he didn't believe it either. Because of Wabi's cheat-like nature, they reached the end of the path after about half an hour. It was rather boring and nothing happened. Then Gu Mengmeng was even more confused. The ocean behind them was like a huge water ball, rippling with water, but the light was blocked off. And the place they were at now was actually dry and filled with air. It was not an underwater cave or any other land. They were at the bottom of the ocean, but the ocean was behind them, as if there was an invisible wall of water blocking off the ocean. Not a single drop of water flowed in. Wabi had also transformed back into his human form. And the miraculous thing was that his injuries had actually healed. Not only that, Gu Mengmeng even felt that his skin had become better than before. She had heard that there was a sea mud face mask that was selling well, but she didn't expect the effects to be so good. Gu Mengmeng secretly decided that she would dig some up when she returned later. It would be good to give it to her friends and family as local specialties. Right? Wabi also noticed the changes on his body, but he didn't take it to heart. He just urged Gu Mengmeng to hurry on. Not long after, Gu Mengmeng saw a huge clamshell. Yes, just a dried clamshell. Heh, as expected, not all demons and ghosts could live for more than 1,000 years. Gu Mengmeng went forward and wanted to pry open the clamshell to take a look. But the moment her hand touched the clamshell, it cracked and shattered into pieces. Was it eroded by the wind? Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders helplessly. She pushed the shredded clamshell to one side and found a pearl the size of a fist. It was black and glowed with a dark green light. It was faint and gave off a mysterious vibe. Gu Mengmeng weighed it in her hand and looked around to see if there was anything else. She thought to herself, was this the kiss of the ocean? A black pearl. It was a little big, but no matter how he looked at it, there was nothing special about it. The luminous pearl that Elvis had given her to play with previously was not much smaller than this. She had crushed it just like that. It did not seem to be that rare. Gu Mengmeng held it in her hands for a long time, but still could not think of anything else. If the kiss of the ocean was not referring to the shattered clamshell, then it could only be referring to this pearl. And on the way back, Gu Mengmeng truly experienced the awesomeness of this pearl. Chapter 777. Gu Mingming was stunned by the scene before her the moment she entered the poisonous fog from the fresh water. The poisonous mist swirled, and like the drain of a bathtub that had been opened, it gradually disappeared from the drain. And this drain was the black pearl in Gu Mingming's hand, the kiss of the ocean. What the heck? Don't judge a pearl by its cover. Gu Mingming stared in bewilderment as the poisonous fog swirled into a huge whirlpool like a tornado. Then the thinnest part of the fog was rapidly sucked into the black pearl. She didn't know how to react. After a long while, when Gu Mingming regained her senses, the poisonous fog had already thinned to the point where she could vaguely see what was going on 3 to 5 meters away. Amidst the dilution of the seawater, there was a sense of ink-stained beauty. Gu Mingming thought about how Wabiai had to swim for half a day to bring her down. No matter how powerful the pearl was, it would take some time to absorb the fog. It would be too much of a waste of time to swim back after it was done. Not to mention Fei Rui and Carter, Elvis and Leah didn't know what was going on down there. Wouldn't they go crazy seeing her taking so long to return? So Gu Mingming leaned over to Wabiai and said, "Let's swim back as we swim. I don't think we can finish absorbing the fog in such a short time." Wabiai had originally come with Gu Mingming. He wasn't interested in the poisonous fog, nor the kiss of the ocean. So when he heard Gu Mingming's words, he nodded and held Gu Mingming under his arm as he swam back slowly. He even intentionally swam towards the areas with the thickest poisonous fog, so that the pearl could absorb the fog faster. Before they could swim out of the poisonous fog, Gu Mingming smelled blood. She instinctively frowned. Could it be that the giant fish tribe and the mermaid tribe had gotten into a fight again? TSK, why were these fish more aggressive than lions and tigers? Gu Mingming was worried that Fei Rui would be at a disadvantage, so she asked Wabiai to speed up. The closer they got, the more Gu Mingming felt that something was wrong. The sounds of fighting were rather loud. It didn't seem like something Fei Rui and Carter could create. After all, with Fei Rui's small physique, he was nothing in front of Kite. It was a one-sided abuse. It was impossible for him to cause such a ruckus. Furthermore, Carter still wanted to woo Melinda, so he couldn't kill Fei Rui. If he really beat Fei Rui up, then he could forget about developing a relationship with Melinda that was more than friendship in this lifetime. Gu Mingming choked on her saliva as she charged out of the poisonous fog. It was not a problem with the seawater, but the blood content of the seawater was too high. Gu Mingming almost doubted her own eyes. What was going on? Did he swim into the burial pit of the sea race? Why were there so many corpses of the sea race? Although they had been beaten back to their original forms and were just fish, Gu Mingming could clearly tell that they were not ordinary fish, but from the ocean tribe. But after returning to their original forms, Gu Mingming could not recognize any of them. The corpses of the seafolk were different from those of ordinary fish. When ordinary fish died, their corpses would float up, but the corpses of the seafolk would sink. After the poisonous fog thinned, the corpses would slowly sink into the poisonous fog. Their bodies were already wounded, and they did not have a strong resistance to poison. As a result, even after 80% of the poisonous fog had been absorbed, their corpses continued to rot in the poisonous fog until not even their bones were left. Chapter 778. Wabiai led Gu Mingming and continued to swim upstream. They could already see people fighting. Huge waves surged beneath the surface of the sea. The battle between the sea tribes was even more brutal than that between the wild beasts on land. Gu Mingming tried her best to distinguish between friend and foe, and finally found Fei Rui and Carter under the guidance of that head of golden hair. At that moment, the two of them were being attacked by another member of the sea tribe. From the looks of it, that person should also be third level. It was hard to say who would win if he fought Carter head-on, but Carter had to deal with him while protecting Melinda at the same time. It was inevitable that he was being attacked from both sides. Gu Mingming quickly swam over and turned to protect Fei Rui and his sister behind her. She faced the enemy's attack head-on and smiled coldly. She didn't even raise her hand. The attacker didn't hesitate at all because of Gu Mingming's appearance. Not only did his movements not slow down, they even became fiercer. In just an instant he adjusted his angle slightly. He was going to take Gu Mingming's life. However, Before that sword-like nose could reach within 3 steps of Gu Mengmeng, it stopped abruptly. The attacker frowned and suddenly turned back to look. His heart skipped a beat, and his face contorted in shock. Fear contorted his face, and he didn't even have time to shout for help before half of his body was bitten off by Wabiai. Blood spread across the sea like a red spider lily blooming in the sea. It was demonic and strange, carrying with it a strong aura of death. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Wabiai threw away the half-fish wrapped in his snake tail in disgust. Then he watched in disgust as it slowly sank into the poisonous fog of the abyss, gradually rotting and dissipating. Twisting his neck, he scanned the surroundings. That gaze was just like looking at food. Great messenger. Fei Rui grasped Melinda's hand and pushed her to Gu Mengmeng's side. Great messenger, please help me take care of my sister. If we all die here today, please bring her back to Saint Nazir. Even if she becomes partners with a land beast, it's fine as long as she survives. As he said that, Fei Rui glanced at Carter. Carter pursed his lips, but didn't say a word. The other party had come prepared. They had concentrated their attacks on Melinda from the start, forcing him to stay by her side to protect her. He could only watch helplessly as his people were scattered by the other party and killed one by one. Now that the giant fish tribe had suffered heavy losses, it was doubtful if they could even survive to the end, much less protect Melinda. He wanted to have her, but compared to his own wish, her survival was more important. She was so beautiful and kind that no matter how vulgar the land orcs were, they would still take pity on her. If it was the tribe of the messenger of the beast deity, she would have a good life. Clenching his fists tightly, Carter slowly took a step forward, ready to fight. It was the sorrow and heroism of a warrior who would never return. But just as he took a step forward, his waist tightened. Melinda hugged Kate's waist from behind and said in a nasal voice, "I'm not leaving. I want to be with Kate. Even if we die together." Chapter 779. Carter and Melinda had no idea what Gu Mengmeng was saying. They only saw her gently nudge the 3 of them away from the battlefield, before instructing, "All members of the giant fish tribe and mermaid tribe, retreat behind your tribe leaders." As soon as he finished speaking, the scattered clansmen retreated in a sorry state. The enemies were intimidated by Wabiai and didn't dare to move. They could only watch helplessly as they left. "Is there no one else on our side?" Gu Mengmeng turned back and asked. Carter scanned the surroundings and nodded. Gu Mengmeng smiled slyly. "Children, it's time to eat." As soon as he finished speaking, countless water snakes surged out from all directions and surrounded the battlefield. Then, they gradually tightened the encirclement and gathered the enemies again and again. Those who attempted to break out of the encirclement or escape would immediately be bitten by the agile water snakes for a second. In less than 3 seconds, they would no longer have the strength to struggle. Then the water snakes would bite their heads and slowly swallow their entire bodies into their stomachs. The others didn't dare to escape anymore. They cowered and moved closer to the center. And in the center, waiting for them was the beast form Wabiai. His bloody mouth was wide open, as if waiting for them to jump into his mouth. Retreat. There was no way out. Attack. There was a huge disparity in power. It was supposed to be a sure-win situation. But the moment that female appeared, the tables were turned. Damn it, when did these snakes appear? All the enemies were surrounded by the snakes like sardines in a can. With Wabiai's mouth, he would probably finish them all in 2 mouthfuls. Wait a minute. Gu Mengmeng chuckled and gestured for him to stop. The snake beast's encirclement stopped shrinking and Wabiai also transformed back into his half-beast form out of boredom. He used his tail to sweep up the person who had just spoken, and threw him in front of Gu Mengmeng. Fish in the water would never be in such a sorry state. Although he was thrown out, he still landed steadily in front of Gu Mengmeng. He straightened his body and looked rather arrogant. "Greetings, great messenger." Gu Mengmeng sized it up and chuckled. "Io, so there are stray beasts in the sea too." That person stood up straight. It was not strange that his identity as a stray beast had been exposed. After all, although his side had the numbers of a tribe, they were not united. On land, tribes lived together, but in the ocean, most tribes were united. Furthermore, The females in the tribe would not mate with outsiders to ensure the purity of the tribe's bloodline. This was also one of the reasons why Melinda was so resistant and evasive when Kate expressed her desire to woo her, even though she had saved Kate. Although the stray beasts are beastmen abandoned by the beast deity, the beast deity should not have sent the great messenger to kill us all, right? I wonder why the great emissary wants to interfere in our dispute today? That person was rather strong-willed. He didn't think that it was wrong for him to initiate a massacre. After all, this world was ruled by the strong, and it was the right thing to do. Gu Mingming smiled at the person in front of her. Of course the beast deity did not order me to kill you all. Otherwise, do you think you still have the chance to talk nonsense with me? Gu Mingming slowly and appropriately released a bit of pressure. It was very subtle and not a lot, but it was enough to make people shiver. The pressure of a beast king. That person gritted his teeth and lowered his head in submission. The reason was simply because he was submissive to the strong, and had a deep-rooted fear of a superior. Aside from the topic, explain why there were clearly water snakes around but no one came out to rescue them just now. These water snakes were brought out by Wabiai. Since Wabiai did not say anything, Gu Mingming did not intend for them to appear from the start. After all, the sea tribe seemed to be very afraid of snakes. She did not want to create panic. Gu Mingming did not expect someone to attack her the moment she went down to retrieve a pearl, so she did not give the order to protect them. And snakes were cold-blooded by nature. To them, the life and death of others was just a trivial matter. They would not care. Chapter 780. There was still a bunch of weaklings behind her. After the previous battle with the stray beasts, Gu Mingming already knew the importance of controlling her emotions. She had been working hard to control her beast pressure over this period of time, and had achieved some success. Seeing that the person who came out to negotiate had given in, there was no need for her to continue pressuring him. After all, what if Melinda was scared to death before the stray beasts? As for why I want to interfere in your dispute, you have to ask yourself. Gu Mingming smiled condescendingly. Don't tell me that you stray beasts who have been banished by the various tribes just happened to meet them, and wanted to exterminate them when you passed by. Why not? Stray beasts do not follow the rules. That person was a little guilty, but still forced himself to look calm. Gu Mingming replied with an "oh." So stray beasts do not follow the rules. All right then, let's leave the stray beasts to them to settle. Gu Mingming took a step forward and slapped that person's shoulder, sending him back into the water snake's encirclement. Gu Mingming's strength was so strong that even a fish could not resist the force. When he could barely steady himself, he felt a pain in his lower body before he could say another word. Turning his head, he realized that his lower body had already entered Wabiai's mouth. The snake's venomous eyes were vertical, emitting a chill that made one's entire body shiver. But he did not even have the chance to beg for mercy before he was swallowed into Wabiai's mouth and died. If it was in the past, Gu Mingming would definitely be a little afraid when faced with such a scene. But after inheriting Snake's memories, she was very clear on one thing. That was to be merciful to one's enemy was to be cruel to oneself. She had already heard the water snake's report. These stray beasts had planned to kill Carter, Fei Rui and the rest, then disguise themselves as them. When Gu Mingming emerged from the abyss, they would suddenly attack and snatch the kiss of the ocean. But they didn't expect a few things. Firstly, the poisonous fog didn't kill Wabiai, nor did it weaken Gu Mingming. Secondly, they underestimated Fei Rui, Carter and the rest. They didn't expect that they would rather risk their lives to stay here and provide support for Gu Mingming. They were clearly not powerful, but none of them tried to escape. If Gu Mingming came back later, looking at the less than 20 people left behind, Gu Mingming's heart was bleeding. How majestic was the scene when they arrived. In less than half a day, there were less than 20 people left. Gu Mingming hugged Fei Rui's arm and grinned. Our little shit looks ferocious when he eats. Don't scare Melinda. Let's return to the shore first. Fei Rui and Carter turned back to look at Wabiai. The absolute disparity in strength was on full display in front of him. The stray beasts that had been tearing at their tribesmen earlier were now coiled around Wabi by the water snake. It was as if they had been sent to the dragon's pool and had lost all will to resist. There was only a desolate look on their faces, clearly waiting for death. Such a scene was not suitable for females to watch. Chapter 781. The moment she broke through the water, the ripples on the surface of the sea shattered the afterglow of the setting sun. The orange-red light shone on her body, making her look like a warrior returning from a blood-soaked battle, exuding an inexplicable sense of heroism. Elvis rushed to the shore and pulled Gu Mengmeng over from Fei Rui's hands. He used his chest to warm her up and scanned her body with his X-ray eyes. He only heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was unharmed from head to toe. Leah wrapped Gu Mengmeng up in a beast's skin that was already warmed up. He looked up and did a head count. He frowned slightly but didn't ask anything. When they had left, there had been a huge crowd. But when they returned, there were only 2 or 3 of them left. Fei Rui and Carter were still bleeding, while Melinda looked haggard, and there were over 20 people behind them. It was easy to guess what had happened without asking. Leah and Elvis were well aware of how much Gu Mengmeng valued human lives. They didn't want her to shoulder all these lives on her own. They observed Gu Mengmeng carefully. Seeing that she wasn't too affected, they felt a little more at ease. But what they didn't know was that Gu Mengmeng could already control her emotions well. It wasn't that she was numb to death, but because she knew that the dead were gone. She had to look forward. She had to be brave. Only then would the people around her not be affected by her depression. Think about how her emotions had tormented Elvis and Leah the last time. She had to love her own men. She couldn't possibly keep crying and worrying Elvis and Leah every time something happened, could she? Gu Mengmeng spread out the black pearl in her hands for Elvis and Leah to see, saying, "This thing is quite rare. I want to go down again tomorrow to suck up all the poisonous fog that has not been sucked dry, in case it pollutes the water source." "What poisonous fog?" Elvis's heart twitched as he asked coldly. Gu Mengmeng explained the situation at the bottom of the sea, including how she went down, how she obtained the kiss of the ocean, what she had encountered on the way back, and what Wabi was doing when he didn't follow up. Elvis and Leah were trembling with fear. They gritted their teeth and wanted nothing more than to strangle this troublemaker. Why did she run to wherever there was danger? The poisonous fog was so thick that even Wabi could not withstand it, and she dared to rush in without blinking? With her delicate skin, could she be more resistant to corrosion than Wabi's snake scales? No matter how Gu Mengmeng explained that she was fine, Elvis and Leah were sure that she had been corroded by the poisonous fog to the extent that a layer of her skin had been peeled off. "Well, no matter what, I've gotten the kiss of the ocean back." But Gu Mengmeng's gaze landed on Carter's and Fei Rui's faces, then back at Melinda, who was still in a state of shock. "The Mermaid Clan and Giant Fish Clan suffered great losses in order to receive me. I cannot just leave like this," Leah said while wiping her hair. "I don't care about other things, but don't mention anything about going into the sea again." Gu Mengmeng turned her head and protested. "I still want to take in the fog. How can I not go into the sea?" Leah did not back down. "Let Wabi absorb the poisonous fog with this stupid pearl. You stay on the shore obediently," Gu Mengmeng said. "I won't." Leah chuckled, his gaze gentle and affectionate. He whispered into Gu Mengmeng's ear. "You have to believe. Elvis and I have 100 ways to make you lose the energy to go into the sea again. Do you want to try?" Chapter 782. What kind of joke was that? Try? She was not stupid. Just Elvis alone could easily make her unable to get out of bed for 3 days. Now with Leah, if these 2 shameless fellows really went all out to teach her a lesson, she would really be dismembered on the bed. Seeing Gu Mengmeng admit defeat, Leah smiled regretfully. He hooked Gu Mengmeng's little chin and said in a slightly resentful tone, "I still wanted to try forcing Polly. What a pity." Gu Mengmeng blushed and pushed Leah away. She then looked at Fei Rui and Carter and said, "There are only so many of you left. It is not practical to split into 2 tribes. Why don't we merge?" Fei Rui doted on his younger sister. He could see that Melinda's feelings towards Carter had changed, and he could not bear to disappoint his sister. And Carter was even more so. He could give up his life for Melinda. What else did he have to protect? But there had never been a mixed tribe in the ocean. Although there were only over 20 mermaids and giant fish tribes left, they did not know whether to call themselves the Mermaids tribe or the Giant Fish tribe. Melinda was also in a difficult position. She obviously hoped that her brother and Carter could become a family. She did not want to leave either of them. But it was a heavy topic to decide on which tribe to make disappear. No matter what she chose, one side would be hurt. This was not something she wanted to see. So Melinda took a step forward and looked at Gu Mengmeng. She said timidly, "The great messenger saved all of our lives today. She is our benefactor. We are willing to listen to the great messenger and merge the two tribes together. But as for the name, could we trouble the great messenger to help us decide on it?" Gu Mengmeng looked at Melinda and felt a sense of pity for her. She was really different from those coquettish bitches outside. Even if girls saw her, they wouldn't think that her delicateness was fake. Instead, they would really want to hold her in the palm of their hands and protect her. It was the kind of feeling that any girl in front of her would want to become a strong woman and not let others bully her. Gu Mengmeng thought that if she could give birth to a daughter one day, she would definitely send her to Melinda to be her godmother and let her raise her. She would also raise a well-bred socialite like Melinda. Melinda was practically the epitome of what all mothers in the world called other people's daughters. It was 2F** King Rare. Gu Mengmeng could not resist Melinda's request. Zhang Xian nodded and pondered for a long time. However, when it came to naming things, the more cautious one was, the less one would be able to come up with an idea. Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and asked Leah, "What would God's blessing be translated into the beast world's language?" Leah replied, "Bridges." Gu Mengmeng felt that it sounded rather nice, so she turned to look at Carter and Fei Rue. "What do the two of you think?" This name was too big. To be honest, not to mention the fact that there were only 20 people in this tribe. Even if there were 2,000 people, no one would dare to call out such an arrogant name. God's blessing. You don't like it? Gu Mengmeng looked at the strange expressions on Fei Rue and Carter's faces. It did not look like they did not like it or like it. Instead, they looked a little scared. Chapter 783. Why should I be angry? Gu Mengmeng was at a loss. Fei Rue lowered his head. You clearly didn't receive the beast deity's blessings, yet you use such a name. This is disrespectful to him. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. Who said you didn't receive the beast deity's blessings? Ah. Fei Rue looked up at Gu Mengmeng in a daze. His sparkling eyes shone with a glimmer of hope. Gu Mengmeng pulled Melinda over and planted a light kiss on her forehead. It was just like how the beast deity had kissed her forehead in the dream realm. Gu Mengmeng said with a sense of blessing, "You all risked your lives to protect the beast deity's daughter. How could he not bless you all?" Melinda blushed all the way to her neck from Gu Mengmeng's kiss. It had nothing to do with love or hate. It was just a kind of excitement. It was as if you were suddenly invited to a meeting by the premier of a country. Not only did the premier not put on airs or keep a distance, he even shook hands with you and said, "Child, you did very well in your exams. I am praising you on behalf of the country." If it were you, you would also blush. Gu Mengmeng looked at Fei Rue and Carter. She smiled. What do the two of you think? If you don't like this name, you can give me a name you like. I have no objections. After all, this is your own tribe. You have the right to name yourselves. Fei Rue and Carter exchanged glances. Then they bowed to Gu Mengmeng. Bridges will forever follow the great messenger. I will be your most reliable servant in the ocean. Actually, Gu Mengmeng didn't intend to recruit servants. Although she liked a senior from the swimming club, she wasn't that passionate about swimming. Now that she had taken the kiss of the ocean, she probably wouldn't return to the beach for no reason. But after she left, it would be difficult for this small tribe of over 20 people to survive in the ocean. If her name could bring them some protection, then so be it. Nodding her head, Gu Mengmeng finally accepted the loyalty of the Bridges tribe to her. Fei Rue was originally the prince of the tribe. He should be the next tribe leader. Carter was the first to speak. He gently held Melinda's little hand, his determined eyes filled with tenderness. He had given all his tenderness to Melinda, and had nothing left for the world. I just want to stay by Melinda's side. I don't care about anything else. Fei Rui shook his head and said, the strength of the patriarch directly determines the strength of a tribe. I know that I'm unable to support the prosperity of a tribe like Bridges. You should be the patriarch. Although I don't like you, I can't deny your strength and talent. Furthermore, my sister is a princess after all. How can her first partner be a mediocre person? Carter still wanted to say something, but Fei Rui suddenly laughed. Without giving him a chance to speak, Fei Rui continued. Also, after you have mated, I want to return to Saint Nazir with the great messenger. When he said this, everyone present was shocked. Elvis scooped Gu Mengmeng back into his arms. His powerful aura engulfed everyone, making them want to kneel on the ground. His face darkened, and he looked like he was about to tear Fei Rui apart. What do you want? Fei Rui was trembling in fear. His clear eyes were filled with grievance. He looked like he was about to cry. I want to learn the great messenger's new skills, and bring those magical skills back to the ocean. Aside from the topic, today's update has ended. Chapter 784. Gu Mengmeng smacked Elvis. He's still a child. Why are you scaring him? Look at how scared he is, he's about to cry. Elvis was rather satisfied with Fei Rui's answer, so when Gu Mengmeng said that, Elvis did not say anything else. He just retracted his pressure and said calmly, as long as he doesn't have any improper thoughts, he won't meet with any undeserved misfortune. Fei Rui's eyes were filled with disbelief. This farce ended just like that. But Gu Mengmeng still didn't know how powerful the Bridges tribe would become in the near future. After all, she had neglected the number of fish that could be born in a single birth. Gu Mengmeng didn't attend Melinda and Carter's wedding. After all, there weren't any unnecessary formalities here. It was a simple and crude wedding where they directly consummated their marriage. Although Gu Mengmeng had already given birth to 4 children, she still held a conservative attitude when it came to observing other people's mating process. Eavesdropping was too exciting. She didn't want it. So Gu Mengmeng bade farewell to everyone at the seaside. Fei Rui stayed behind to wait for Carter and Melinda to mate before returning to Saint Nazir, while Gu Mengmeng and the rest returned the way they came. Gu Mengmeng originally wanted Wabiai to return to the Snake King Valley directly, but Wabiai had a lazy expression and didn't respond. Gu Mengmeng knew that he was still worried about her. He was afraid that if anything happened to her, he wouldn't be able to answer to Snake. But even though she was already so powerful that she didn't need to fear anyone, Wabiai still treated her like a parent. Gu Mengmeng felt helpless, but she didn't dislike it either. Sometimes, she even had the illusion that Wabiai was like her biological brother. He was impudent, but he would still stand in front of her when she was in danger. No matter how powerful she was, he still didn't think she could face any difficulties or dangers. This feeling was pretty good. After all, in the beast world, males only treated females with the intention of mating. But Wabiai was an exception. As for flaws, this brother of hers was a full 800 years older than her. TSK, the age difference was a little too big. The journey back was not as smooth as when they had come. Every so often, Gu Mengmeng could sense that someone was observing them from the shadows. However, it was obvious that they were afraid of Wabiai and Elvis's aura and didn't dare to reveal themselves. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. This must be after the kiss of the ocean? How convenient. Wabiai said lazily. This is the first time I've seen food following me. I don't even have to go far to hunt. Gu Mengmeng rolled her eyes. Can you not be so hardcore? Before they make a move, we can't make the first move. Wabiai clicked his tongue impatiently, expressing his disdain. Gu Mengmeng did not back down and snorted back. It was night, and all was quiet. A few black figures tiptoed in the night sky and slowly approached the sleeping Gu Mengmeng. He was secretly delighted in his heart. Although he was powerful, he was a little too arrogant and conceited. He actually slept so soundly. Wasn't he a little too careless? One hand slowly reached towards Gu Mengmeng, wanting to take away the kiss of the ocean from her. However, before his hand could even touch her clothes, he felt a sharp pain. He looked down and saw that the back of his hand had already started to rot. Chapter 785. Tisk. After a soft sound, the black figure with a broken hand was thrown away. Leah swayed his large tail and said with a disappointed expression, "Do you have any professional ethics? Can you make such a loud noise when stealing? I can't even pretend not to see it. So unprofessional, you let me down." The few people who came along looked at each other. What did he mean? Gu Mingming sat up from Elvis's arms. Elvis's blue eyes were filled with love as he looked at her. He rubbed her little head and said, "In the end I still disturbed your sleep, right?" Gu Mingming sighed and said, "I knew they were following me. I couldn't sleep well." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's little face lightly and said, "It's all right, I'll settle it soon." With that, Elvis stood up and walked step by step towards the few thieves who disturbed Gu Mingming's sleep. Even stray beasts have rules. Elvis stretched his neck to the left and right as a warm-up. In a flash, he grabbed the rat beast that was trying to escape and threw it into the sky. A huge eagle owl flew past at a low altitude, and its two claws that were like metal pincers dug into the rat beast's flesh, directly throwing it into the sky. A cry of agony could be heard from 300 meters away, followed by scattered pieces of flesh falling from the sky. A gust of wind blew past, and the eagle owl circled in the sky before landing steadily on the ground. He already looked like a sickly young man, his face as white as the moonlight and without a trace of life. His gaze was cold and not sharp, but it was as if he was strangling the throat of the person being stared at, causing fear to rise in one's heart. And all this happened in just 3 to 5 seconds. Taking another step forward, Elvis was like Satan in the dark night, emitting a dangerous aura around him. He was like the king of hell that could not be disobeyed. His words rang in the night sky, like a divine decree from Azura, sending chills down one's spine and making one submit. You can take it by force, but you can't steal it. And you guys have broken this rule. One of the stray beasts was so intimidated by this aura that his legs turned to jelly. He retreated and wanted to escape, but suddenly he seemed to have kicked something and a shiver shot up from the bottom of his feet. He did not even have the courage to look back. The snake's cold tongue licked his neck, and a lazy and slow voice rang in his ears, carrying with it an indescribable malice and ridicule. "Supper? It doesn't look very delicious." Before he could even scream out in pain, his lower body had already been tightly wrapped by the thick snake tail, while his upper body was already in the snake's mouth. The remaining 3 ambushers exchanged glances and quickly locked onto their target, Leah. Although Ian and Leah were third-level orcs, they did not have much of an advantage against land beasts that could fly. Meanwhile, the fox, who looked like a show-off, was obviously the easiest person to defeat in this team. With a sudden movement, the 3 ambushers charged towards Leah with all their might. But Leah chuckled and pointed at his own nose nonchalantly. "I'm being belittled." With a turn, Leah easily dodged the first claw that attacked him. His furry large tail swept across that person's face playfully, with a strong sense of provocation. Chapter 786. The second stray beast that attacked Leah was grabbed by the wrist by Leah. With a snap, his arm was dislocated. It was not forcefully broken, but from the joints. The flesh was still connected, but the bones were broken. That arm was like a pendulum that had lost its power, hanging down casually. "TSK, TSK, TSK, stretching out your claws in front of the witch doctor. Looks like you really don't want your claws anymore." Leah nimbly ducked under the other arm of the second stray beast, and hid behind his back. At this moment, the third stray beast's claws had already pierced through the chest of the second stray beast, and was heading straight for Lee's throat. Luckily, Leah was not sticking close to the second stray beast's back. Instead, he was 1.5 steps away, so the third stray beast's blood-stained hand missed. He retracted it, and threw the second stray beast's corpse onto the ground without any guilt. Leah patted his own chest. "Aya, you scared me to death. I almost got touched by you. TSK, so annoying. Our Meng Meng doesn't like others touching me." There was only one of the 3 stray beasts left, and it was the only 4th-level orc among the 3. Given Lee's current abilities, it was very dangerous to go against him. In order not to be attacked from both sides, Leah had decided to get rid of the 2 3rd-level beasts first. But even if it was a one-on-one battle, it was still very difficult to retaliate with the difference in levels. Apart from Gu Mengmeng, he did not care about anyone else's life or death. Ian wanted to step forward to help Leah, but was held down by his shoulder by Elvis. Ian looked at Elvis in confusion, but Elvis turned to look at Gu Mengmeng. With Gu Mengmeng's current abilities, helping Leah was just a matter of beckoning her finger. But she did not move at all. She just clenched her fists tightly and stared at Lee's battle. She did not even have the intention of asking Elvis to help Leah. Then Elvis's gaze was gentle. The corners of his lips curled up into a beautiful curve. Leah had been seen through. The stray beast's fangs pressed towards Lee's spine. If he bit down, Leah would be crippled even if he did not die. Leah, I won't allow you to get hurt. Gu Mengmeng sat on the spot. Her voice seemed like a slight ripple, but it could not conceal the waves hidden within. Her voice was trembling. She was afraid. This knowledge made Leah hesitate. Should he continue pretending? If the way he did it for her good made her worry, then would he still persist? No, you can't. Because he had already hurt her once for her own good. He absolutely could not let it happen a second time. With a sweep of its fluffy tail, it sent the stray beast flying. The tip of his foot touched the ground lightly, but his entire body bounced up as if he had stepped on a spring. In an instant, he landed behind the stray beast that had been sent flying and kicked his lumbar vertebrae. The huge impact in Lee's kick caused the stray beast's spine to crack. He flew out in a strange manner, just like a broken doll that did not receive the slightest bit of pity. Then, a layer of moonlight enveloped Lee's body, making him look like an elf in the dark night. The bloodstains on his body were not hideous. Instead, they looked like poppies blooming on the other shore, exuding a fatal temptation. Chapter 787. Gu Mengmeng cupped Lee's face and gave him a deep kiss. It was a lingering kiss. Leah, congratulations on leveling up. Leah didn't reply and just hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms. This little one was too shrewd now. It was getting harder and harder to deceive her. But this difficulty made him feel an unprecedented sense of bliss. She was paying attention to him like this. She didn't say anything, but she knew everything. After half the night, coupled with the blood and corpses all over the ground, it looked like a slaughterhouse. There was no way she could sleep in this place. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng in his arms and used a beast's skin to cover her head to let her catch up on her sleep. Meanwhile, the few males continued their journey towards Saint Nazaire. It was normal for males to not sleep for a few days and nights. They had to stop and rest every night just to take care of Gu Mengmeng's routine. Although Gu Mengmeng didn't need to do anything in the middle of the night, she was still very nervous. Now that she was at ease, her deep sleepiness couldn't be dispelled no matter what. She slept all the way until noon when she was woken up by hunger. When the sun was at its hottest, it was the most torturous for Wabi. He lay lazily on the tree, his head drooping, not wanting to talk to anyone. He did not sleep, nor did he move. He just sat there like a rubber snake. Although Ian could fly, his strength was at its peak at night. During the day, he looked even more lethargic and listless, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. He was a male, but he looked as if he was suffering from anemia due to menstruation for 30 days a month. She didn't know what was going on. Seeing how weak he looked like a little sister in the forest, Gu Mengmeng felt that not feeding him was torture, not to mention letting him hunt. So, Elvis handed Gu Mengmeng over to Leah and went out to hunt. Gu Mengmeng sat in Lee's arms and stroked his large tail. She exclaimed in surprise, your tail seems to have become thicker after you leveled up." Seeing that Gu Mengmeng liked his transformation, Leah couldn't help but smile. He said, "The appearance of the Snow Fox tribe will change according to their level." Gu Mengmeng turned around and looked at Lee's face carefully. Leah was good-looking to begin with. Coupled with his otherworldly aura, he looked like a demon or a deity. Perhaps after looking at him for a long time, Gu Mengmeng had become immune to it, so she had not carefully scrutinized Lee's facial features for a long time. Gu Mingming then looked at his eyes seriously after he mentioned it. Her eyebrows looked a little thicker than before. She looked a little less charming and more heroic. His tall nose seemed to have narrowed a little, becoming a more standard Western tiger's nose instead of the Oriental lion's nose. The tip of his nose was firm, making his facial features more three-dimensional and deep. A pair of long and affectionate eyes seemed to be filled with spring water, pouring a pool of deep love onto Gu Mingming's face, as if she was the only person in the entire world who could see him. His thin lips did not have a single wrinkle, and looked as perfect as a work of art carved by God. His slightly open mouth was like an invitation, making Gu Mingming feel an urge to immediately offer her lips to him. Li's face was even more perfect than before, so perfect that every angle was like a masterpiece. Chapter 788. It's broad daylight. What nonsense are you spouting? Gu Mingming blushed and lowered her head. However, Leah replied with a meaningful "oh." His lips moved closer to Gu Mingming's ear. His warm and ambiguous breath sprayed onto Gu Mingming's earlobe. With a hoarse voice he said in an ambiguous tone, "So this is an invitation? You can pamper me at night, right?" She did not know if it was a psychological effect, but Li's hormones seemed to have increased after he leveled up. She should have been used to being teased, but after being teased for half a year, she could no longer resist Li's advances. Li's fingers slid across Gu Mingming's arm, from her shoulder to her wrist. His fingertips seemed to carry an electric current, causing Gu Mingming's body to go numb. The only place she could hide was to lean deeper into his arms. Leah was satisfied with Gu Mingming's little action, but his hand landed on the kiss of the ocean in her hands. He tapped it twice nonchalantly and said, "The kiss of the ocean can absorb the poison left behind by Elvis in your body. If you eat it, our mating problem will be solved." Gu Mingming looked at the fist-sized black pearl in her hands and twitched her lips. "Are you sure you won't choke me to death?" Leah lightly knocked Gu Mingming's head. "Silly girl, who asked you to eat it whole? I can crush it, and then you can eat it." Gu Mingming had thought Leah was just joking around with his suggestion. Seeing that he was really prepared to crush it, Gu Mingming panicked. She pulled the kiss of the ocean back into her arms and frowned. "No, this is Qishuan's ransom. You cannot touch it." Leah sighed and did not touch the kiss of the ocean again. He just hugged Gu Mingming and said, "What should I do? I am jealous." The top of Gu Mingming's head was pressed against Li's chin. She could not lift her head to look at his expression, and could only respond with a single word. Leah said, "Elvis is your first partner, and is more important to you than me. I admit that. But now, even the little wolf pups are more important than me. Mingming, my heart hurts." Gu Mingming smiled helplessly. "You are all my family and equally important to me. But Qi is in a more dangerous situation now, so I have no choice but to prioritize him." "I know." Leah said, "I also promised not to make things difficult for you. I understand the logic, but I still feel very disappointed. I was too greedy, wasn't I? I want to be the most important person to you." Gu Mingming hugged Leah and leaned her face against his chest, saying softly, "I'm sorry." Li's heart skipped a beat. He pursed his lips and chuckled. "You know very well that I prefer your confession to an apology." Without any hesitation, Gu Mingming said softly, "I love you." Leah then smiled contentedly and did not say anything else. He had committed a taboo. He should not have fought for the most important in front of Gu Mingming. Back then, when Gu Mingming wanted to give him the only one, he was the one who forcefully pushed her into Elvis's arms. Later, Mingming asked him to give up. It was he himself who said that even if he could only be a beast pet, it would be fine as long as he could stay by her side. But now, he was already her legitimate partner, and he could confidently hold her in his arms. However, people were always greedy. Chapter 789. Actually, you could have leveled up a long time ago, right? Gu Mingming pressed her little face against Li's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Although it was a question, it sounded like a statement when it came out of his mouth. Leah chuckled and did not deny it. Gu Mingming continued, I thought about it many times after that. Previously, when we were attacked by stray beasts, although you were caught in a pincer attack, the other party was also a third-level orc. With your third-level energy reserves, as long as you broke through the boundary, you could use the level system to turn the situation around. But you seem to rather be injured than leveling up. I always felt that it was strange, until last night, when those 3 stray beasts attacked you together without any discussion. Only then did I understand what you were thinking. Lee's face carried an indulgent smile throughout. He had always disliked others guessing his thoughts, especially when his thoughts were seen through. He would be very resistant and immediately force himself to hide his emotions even deeper. But when he was seen through by Gu Mengmeng, he felt a faint sense of excitement and anticipation. It was as if his carefully wrapped present was opened by his beloved, and with just one look, the other party knew how much effort he had put into choosing the present and how meticulously he had wrapped it. The feeling of his efforts being seen and cherished was really good. It was so good that the blood in his entire body warmed up, nourishing every cell in his body. Tell me about it. Leah coaxed Gu Mengmeng to say more of her thoughts. He liked to hear her describe her thinking process, because he could not enter her brain to see clearly how she looked when her mind was filled with himself. So he treasured every word she explained to him, and even more so, he treasured the lively expression on her face when she talked about topics related to him. Gu Mengmeng did not know how Leah was feeling when he looked at her. His gaze towards her was always affectionate, and she seemed to have gotten used to it. But thinking about the reason why Leah was unwilling to level up, Gu Mengmeng could not help feeling a little heartache. She sighed softly and said, "You didn't level up because you wanted to focus all the danger on yourself when we encountered a situation like yesterday, using yourself as bait to ensure my safety." His heart trembled. His Gu Mengmeng was so sensitive, he felt warm and proud, but also a little uneasy. As sensitive as she was, she couldn't accept his kindness with a clear conscience. Gu Mengmeng looked up and met Li's eyes. She said seriously, "You clearly know that I am already strong enough now. You don't need to do this anymore." Silly girl. Leah rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head. The sunlight passed through the leaves and landed on his face, bringing much warmth to his smile. He pulled Gu Mengmeng's little hand to his lips and kissed it before continuing. "No matter how strong you are, you will always be my weakness. If you are even the slightest injury, it would be my heart." Chapter 790. Didn't he know that her heart would ache? No, Leah had always known that. He even hoped that Gu Mengmeng would never see through his thoughts, but at the same time, he was waiting for her to say her heart will ache. Gu Mengmeng looked up into Li's eyes and said seriously and cautiously, "When Snake died, I almost couldn't recover from the setback. If not for you and Elvis staying by my side, I might never have been able to walk out of it. Do you want me to experience that kind of collapse again? If you were the one who died, I would break down." Leah hugged Gu Mengmeng tightly in his arms and kissed her left ear, saying intimately, "I was wrong. I shouldn't have made you worry. Don't be angry, don't be sad, forgive me, all right?" Gu Mengmeng's chin rested on Li's shoulder, and she tilted her head, saying softly, "Hurry up and become stronger. Didn't you say that you will accompany me to bully others and become tyrants?" Leah chuckled, holding Gu Mengmeng's little face and kissing her lips. Under the sunlight, his smile was exceptionally radiant and beautiful, saying, "All right, as long as Gu Mengmeng says it, I will do it. I will quickly become stronger, then accompany you to bully others and rape others." Gu Mengmeng basked in the sun, feeling much more relaxed now that she had spoken her mind. Leah would always do what he promised her. He said that he would become stronger, and that he would no longer use himself as bait. This made Gu Mengmeng feel much more at ease. After waiting for a long time, Gu Mengmeng turned to look into the distance and said worriedly, "Why isn't Elvis back yet?" Leah also felt that with Elvis's abilities, the time taken for this hunt was a little too long. Not wanting Gu Mengmeng to worry, he said casually, "After all, this is not our territory. It might be more troublesome to find satisfying prey. You also know, other than meat, he also wants to be picky about the skin." Gu Mengmeng nodded. Yes. After the rainy season ended, it was going to be winter. At this time, Elvis really had to start preparing the beast skin for their family to use during the winter. And ever since Gu Mengmeng appeared, Elvis's requirements for the beast skin became stricter and stricter. Sometimes, Gu Mengmeng even suspected that Elvis was a Virgo. Thinking about this, she did not say anything more and continued to nestle in Li's arms, stroking the two. The upgraded version of Big Tail was waiting for Elvis to return. Without a watch, Gu Mengmeng could only estimate the time. About 1.5 to 2 hours later, Elvis returned with the processed prey. However, "You're hurt." Gu Mengmeng immediately jumped out of Li's arms and looked at the palm-sized wound on Elvis's shoulder. Her heart ached. "What happened? Are you in danger?" Elvis looked at his wound and laughed softly. He rubbed Gu Mengmeng's little head and carried her up while passing the prey to Leah to cook. "No, I was bitten by accident when I was hunting. I have a strong recovery ability. I'll be fine tomorrow or the day after." Gu Mengmeng frowned and looked at Elvis. "You promised not to lie to me. A 5th-grade orc had been bitten by its prey during a hunt? Why don't you say that a wolf jumped into a rabbit's nest and was eaten by the rabbit?" Chapter 791. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and took a deep breath. She stared into Elvis's eyes for a long time without saying a word. Elvis felt guilty from her stare. Gu Mengmeng was too observant now, and it was too difficult to hide anything from her. "Xiao Meng." Elvis opened his mouth, wanting to beg for mercy. But Gu Mengmeng didn't give him a chance. She raised her head and shouted, "Lia Ian Wabi, follow me." Gu Mengmeng pushed Elvis and jumped down from his arms. The 3 people who were called out did not say a word, and just stood a step behind Gu Mengmeng. "Xiao Meng." Elvis wanted to say something but stopped himself. He wanted to call out to her but didn't know how to start. Gu Mengmeng frowned and looked at the wound on Elvis's shoulder. Feeling vexed, she shook her head and said, "My man was bitten to this extent. If I don't pull out all his teeth, I am not Gu Mengmeng." With that, she turned to leave. Leah glanced back at Elvis with a conflicted gaze, but he didn't say anything. He carried Gu Mengmeng and walked in the direction Elvis had come from. There was a rustling sound in the bushes and Gu Mengmeng knew that it was the little snake that Wabi had brought out from the Snake King Valley. She instructed, "Lead the way and find the person who bit Elvis for me." The little snake hissed and stuck out its tongue, replying to Gu Mengmeng in snake language. Then it shot out in all directions like an arrow released from a bow, fanning out in a carpet search. How could Elvis let Gu Mengmeng leave just like that? Even if she had the powers of a beast king and a 5th-level pervert like Wabi was by her side, she was still his female. How could he be at ease if she rushed in without knowing anything? He quickly chased after her, wanting to pull her back from Li's arms. But Gu Mengmeng turned her head to show her rejection. "Xiao Meng." Elvis sighed and finally gave in. "I will tell you the truth, all right? Don't be angry, all right?" Gu Mengmeng then turned to look at Elvis. The words "lie and you will die" were clearly written on her face. Elvis was not afraid of the heavens, the earth, pain and death. But he was extremely afraid of this delicate little person in Li's arms. There was nothing he could do when she was angry. "The stray beasts here are old acquaintances of mine," Elvis said with a frown. Gu Mengmeng was stunned. "Old acquaintance? Could it be?" Elvis nodded and said, "This is where I was born." Under Gu Mengmeng's signal, everyone stopped in their tracks and just stared at Elvis. Gu Mengmeng sighed and opened her arms towards Elvis in Li's arms. "Hug." Elvis chuckled and took Gu Mengmeng back from Li's arms. He kissed her face and took in her scent greedily. Only then did the uneasiness in his heart slowly dissipate. Wabi and Ian tactfully retreated far away, leaving space for the family of 3. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng to a big tree and with a leap, he sat on a branch. Gu Mengmeng sat steadily in his arms, while Leah chose a branch that was slightly lower than Elvis and Gu Mengmeng to lie on. Raising his head to look at Elvis and Gu Mengmeng, Elvis calmed his emotions and said slowly, "The person who bit me is my blood-related father beast." Chapter 792. Seeing that Gu Mengmeng's expression was not right, Elvis felt a little heartache and asked, Actually, you don't have to force yourself to face them, I can handle it. Gu Mingming did not say a word and just lowered her head. She had already imagined a drama about the feud between the rich and the powerful. Elvis's father would throw a blank check at her face and say with a dark tone, "Fill in the amount yourself. Take the money and get lost from my son. A woman like you is not worthy of my son." Then, Gu Mingming would slap the table and stand up to retort with a classic line. "I'm different from the other women around him. I'm not with him for money." Then Elvis's father would sneer sinisterly, "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Very good. Then your friends around you will start to be unlucky one by one. I want to see how long you can fight with me for." Gu Mingming had already started to shiver. When Elvis's father threw her a check, should she obediently accept it, and then use the money to support Elvis? Or should she tear it into pieces domineeringly, and throw it back at his father's face? Wait. She seemed to have neglected a very important question. What question was it? There were no checks in the beast world. Then, what would his father throw at her face? Beast skin? Xiaomeng. Seeing that Gu Mingming did not answer him, Elvis's expression kept changing and no one knew what he was thinking. He was a little worried and frustrated. He had already tried his best not to get hurt, but that old fellow still bit his shoulder. Damn it. Gu Mingming looked up with a wronged expression. She pouted and asked, "Will you listen to your father?" "Elvis." Gu Mingming continued, "If your father objects to you being with me, will you abandon me?" "Elvis." Gu Mingming hugged Elvis's neck and said, "Let's elope. We'll return to Saint Nazaire now and hide far away from him." Elvis laughed out loud. All his worries were crushed into dust by her invitation to elope. The words that he wanted to explain and comfort were stuck in his throat, finally condensing into an indulgent one. Leah held his forehead, expressing his helplessness at this development. On the way here, he had already noticed that something was wrong with Elvis. Combined with the aura of the orcs who were secretly following them, he could roughly guess the relationship between them and Elvis. But it was obvious that the relationship between Elvis and his beast father was different from what Gu Mingming had imagined. However, he and Elvis were happy to see her not getting involved in this mess, so Leah did not insist on it. He raised his head and said, "If you want to run, you have to be quick. Otherwise, they will catch up to us." Gu Mingming sat up straight and was about to climb down from the tree with Elvis. The moment she moved, she was taken aback and smiled bitterly. It's already too late. Leah and Elvis quickly straightened their bodies and entered a state of alertness. They knew very well that Gu Mingming's senses were sharper than theirs. Gu Mingming sat on a tree branch and pointed at the bushes not far away. She smiled and said, "Since we are already here, why hide?" The bushes shook a few times and a male stood up from the bushes. He was tall and burly, exuding an indescribable aura from his body. He looked very much like a darkened version of Elvis. His genes were so strong that there was no need for a DNA test. Aside from the topic, yeah, Daddy Elvis would be online tomorrow. So today's update ended again. Chapter 793. Gu Mingming was still a little nervous when she saw that face. After all, it was her first time meeting an elder. "Greetings, great messenger." Elvis's father spoke first and bowed to Gu Mingming under the tree. Gu Mingming felt a little awkward. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and allowed him to carry her down from the tree. Just as she was about to say something to Elvis's father, Elvis spoke first. "Ha! How dare you approach this place alone? Have you really gone senile?" Gu Mingming was taken aback and did not know what to say. 16 years old. So Elvis was in his rebellious phase now? The injury on your shoulder doesn't seem to be enough to let you understand the difference between you and me, right? Gu Mingming frowned. So Elvis's way of educating Kamwu was passed down from his ancestors? Did their family always have such a strong tone? Elvis placed Gu Mingming in Li's arms, then walked towards his beast father. Standing 3 steps away from them, they faced each other. Gu Mingming could almost see the sparks between their eyes. She could feel the sparks flying in their eyes. A male with a female is equivalent to having misgivings and weaknesses. My stupid son, you are actually so deeply involved in it. You have really let down my expectations of you. Elvis sneered and moved his neck left and right. This was a small movement before he prepared to attack. Gu Mingming knew that once this small movement appeared, it meant that he was going to fight with his life on the line. He would not stop until he was dead. With his own father, did he need to be so ruthless? Gu Mingming was worried that something would really happen during the fight. She called out, "Hubby, don't fool around." Elvis's back stiffened, but he still turned around and returned to Gu Mingming's side without any hesitation. His father did not say anything and just smiled in disdain. That smile was extremely sarcastic and arrogant, making people uncomfortable. She did not know how to describe that kind of oppression. Gu Mingming did not like this father-in-law. Even though his appearance was almost 80% similar to Elvis, she still did not like him. With conflict, her tone was naturally not very friendly. She said coldly, "I respect that you are Elvis's father, so I do not intend to treat you in any discordant manner. But I really do not like others to bully my man. So please stop before you go too far. If you have anything to say to me, please say it quickly and leave immediately. Because my man obviously doesn't want to see you." Elvis's father took a step forward and sized up Gu Mingming. It was not as if he was inspecting his daughter-in-law, but more like food. Gu Mingming did not like his gaze, but did not want to argue with him. "You want to eat me?" He was just afraid that his teeth weren't good enough, and he wouldn't be able to bite down. "I want the kiss of the ocean in your hands. Give it to me and I'll leave." "Impossible, I have other uses for this." Gu Mingming rejected him confidently. Elvis's father seemed to have expected that Gu Mingming would not agree so easily, so he lowered his shoulders slightly and stretched his shoulder blades. "Since that's the case, I can only rely on my own abilities to snatch it from you." Her malicious and murderous gaze landed on Elvis. "I heard that he is your first partner. Let's start with him. If you change your mind and are willing to give the kiss of the ocean to me, tell me. If it's in time, it might be able to save his life." Chapter 794. Both of their fighting styles were swift and fierce. Every move was aimed at fatal spots, and there was not the slightest bit of sloppiness in their movements. Gu Mingming also became nervous. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to control her emotions. A cold sensation wrapped around her ankle. Looking down, she saw a familiar snake tail wrapping itself around her. "Wabi-ai." Gu Mingming was puzzled. Wabi-ai yawned nonchalantly. "Only by protecting you can your little wolf have nothing to worry about. Didn't you realize? That fellow only needs to create the illusion that he is going to attack you, and your little wolf will be distracted. And he will always be on the defensive. Even though they are evenly matched, they are already at a disadvantage." Even though they knew that no one in the beast world could hurt her, she was still their weakness. These words were not just empty words. Indeed, after Wabi-ai protected Gu Mingming tightly, Elvis's passive situation was alleviated. Although he had already suffered many injuries, his gaze was more focused and his judgment sharpened. Including the time in the ocean, Gu Mingming had fought with stray beasts twice. She knew that the stray beasts' fighting style was brutal and ruthless, but she didn't know they could be this wild. If a battle between a proper tribe and a stray beast was like an NBA basketball game, exciting and tense, with no mistakes allowed and every shot determined the outcome of the game, then the battle between Elvis and his father was like an underground basketball game with a life and death contract. Winning and losing was not just about the game, but also about life and death. So unless Elvis died or killed his own father with his own hands, this battle would not stop? Was he going to force his own son to this extent just for the kiss of the ocean? Gu Mingming really couldn't understand the family relationships in the beast world. She thought that Elvis and Kanwa's interaction was already weird enough. Who knew that it was already the gentle version? "Mingming, are you going to eat the kiss of the ocean?" Leah suddenly asked. Gu Mingming was taken aback for 2 seconds before she immediately smiled. "Yes, I am going to eat it. That way no one will keep thinking about it and steal it." As expected, Elvis's father panicked the moment she said that. He didn't even care about his battle with Elvis or Wabi-ai, who was protecting Gu Mingming. He pounced at Gu Mingming, prepared to snatch the kiss of the ocean from her hands. The moment he revealed a flaw, Elvis bit his thigh without hesitation and pulled him back forcefully. He threw him onto the ground and stepped on the back of his waist, looking down on him like a messenger from hell pronouncing death. His face was cold and calm, as if even the most basic fear towards death had disappeared. A trace of regret flashed in his father's eyes, but he immediately felt relieved. He coldly snorted, "The winner takes all. If you want to kill me, then kill me." Elvis had no intention to be courteous with him. He raised his sharp claws and dug straight for his heart. "Wait." Gu Mengmeng opened her mouth and only used 2 words to disperse Elvis's murderous aura. The claws transformed into human hands in midair, and Elvis tilted his head to look at Gu Mengmeng, as if waiting for her to continue. Gu Mengmeng knew that Elvis didn't have a good impression of his father. Even if he didn't know what had happened in the past, Gu Mengmeng still had the ability to tell the truth. But Gu Mengmeng still couldn't kill her own father with her own hands. Chapter 795. I can't give you the kiss of the ocean, but if you are willing to tell me what you need it for, maybe I can think of other ways to help you. Gu Mengmeng pushed Wabiai away and walked to Elvis's side. Opening her arms, she made a gesture of asking for a hug. She wasn't afraid of Elvis's murderous aura, but she hoped that she could bring Elvis peace and happiness. Killing might be the simplest and most direct way to solve problems, but it would never make one happy. Her man shouldn't struggle in the midst of killing. Elvis had never resisted Gu Mengmeng's closeness. It was the same at all times. He carried Gu Mengmeng up, then retreated warily. Wabiai stood lazily between Elvis and his father, while Leah stood half a step in front of Elvis. Even Ian was hidden in the treetops, in a defensive position. There were also countless little snakes waiting in the bushes. As long as Elvis's father made the slightest misstep, these few forces would rush out to tear him to shreds and slaughter him. He sighed. It could be said that an ambitious man was short of breath. He forced himself up. As a stray beast, he knew all too well how passive his current situation was. Death was clearly the release he had always been seeking, but he couldn't die now. He couldn't let go of the person he originally hated. If he, the leader of the stray beasts, died, what would become of that person's situation? He should be feeling the thrill of revenge, but his heart just clenched painfully. I want to use it to save someone. Elvis's father said. Who? Gu Mengmeng asked. Elvis's father hesitated for a moment, but still raised his hand and pointed at Elvis. His mother. Your wife? Gu Mengmeng blurted out, but immediately realized that she had said something wrong. If Elvis's mother was his wife, how could he have become a stray beast? So, as expected, Elvis's father shuddered as if a sharpened bamboo had pierced his heart. Gu Mengmeng knew that she had said the wrong thing, and that an apology would be too pretentious. She changed the topic. What's wrong with her? Elvis's father's gaze was a little cloudy. He lowered his head and said with difficulty, She's dying. Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She turned to look at Elvis. Elvis's face was expressionless, as if he was listening to a story that had nothing to do with him. It wasn't that he was cold-blooded, but he was too unfamiliar with the word mother. In his entire life, he had never felt any warmth from his mother. On the contrary, almost all the suffering he had suffered in his childhood came from that female. Sympathy. It was too difficult for Elvis. But he had never mentioned all these to Gu Mengmeng. It was not that he did not want to be comforted, but he did not want those ugly memories to appear in her memory. As long as she was by his side, it was already a great comfort. Gu Mengmeng knew that Elvis did not have a happy childhood and suffered a lot. She did not want to force Elvis to forgive his parents, but at least let them live. This way, when Elvis wanted to forgive them one day, he would have the chance to hear that sorry. Leah. Gu Mengmeng turned towards Leah. Leah was the professional when it came to saving lives. Chapter 796. Glancing at Elvis's father, Gu Mengmeng shook her head. Let's go together. Leah tilted his head and raised his brows. Are you belittling me and thinking that I will be bullied? Gu Mengmeng shook her head. I can't bear to be separated from you. Not even for a second. Yeah, this was a reason he could not reject. Leah knew that Gu Mingming was just trying to appease him, but he could not bear to expose this sweet little lie. The feeling of being pestered by her felt so good. Looking up at Elvis, Leah chuckled. First partner, the female has spoken. What should we do? The place that had once been like hell to him no longer held any special meaning now. The male whom he had once thought he would never be able to defeat, now had one of his legs bitten to pieces by him. The female whom he had repeatedly resented for giving birth to him. He could not even remember what she looked like now. Even so, since Xiao Meng felt that he should go and see her, then so be it. Carrying Gu Mingming, he slowly walked in front of his father. Elvis looked at him coldly, as if he was looking at a stranger. He slowly opened his mouth. His voice sounded like a soul-sucking demon from hell. Peter, you better not play any tricks. Otherwise, I can easily destroy everything you have now, including that female. Threatening his own father, be it his expression or words, were much sharper than when he was fighting Kanwu. In comparison, Elvis was practically a loving father to Kanwu. Gu Mingming facepalmed. She no longer had the energy to criticize the way this father and son interacted with each other. Ignoring Peter, Elvis walked past him and headed towards the place where he used to rest based on his memory. Wabi continued to follow lazily while Ian circled in the sky. Leah was unexpectedly kind and used a tree branch as a splint to fix Peter's leg in place. Then he wagged his tail and followed beside Gu Mingming. He smiled slyly and asked her to repeat that she couldn't bear to leave him. Not even for a second. Perhaps this was the first time someone had entered the stray beast's territory of their own accord. Moreover, he looked like he was on an outing and seemed to be in a good mood. This scene was especially strange in the eyes of the stray beasts. A 5th-level snake beast, a 5th-level wolf beast, a 4th-level snow fox and a 3rd-level birdman. TSK. This combination was not to be trifled with. However, the little beauty in the wolf beast's arms looked very alluring and smelled very nice. The primitive restlessness triggered a series of low whimpers. His lecherous and greedy gaze lingered on Gu Mingming, making her feel extremely displeased. Cupping Elvis's face with both hands, she looked at Leah and said, "If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me." The two males chuckled, feeling rather helpless, but they could only nod their heads. Then Gu Mingming swept a cold glance across the area and instantly unleashed a powerful suppressive force, causing those stray beasts to collapse to the ground. Elvis and Wabi were still all right, while Leah looked like he was struggling to hold on. But Ian, who was flying in midair, fell straight down. He looked at Gu Mingming with a pitiful expression. Sorry, Gu Mingming stuck her tongue out at Ian apologetically. First-level and second-level stray beasts were forced back to their original forms by Gu Mingming. Third-level and above stray beasts might not die, but their brains were also in a mess. Beast King level? Beast King. His bones were trembling, and his only instinct was to escape. Chapter 797. The layout of the cave reminded Gu Mingming of the Water Curtain Cave in Journey to the West. Apart from the fact that there was no waterfall at the entrance, any monkey would be able to pull up the great sage equaling heaven's flag with a pole. She really couldn't tell that this was the cave of a stray beast leader. She had thought that stray beasts lived in places that were as grand as the Lion Camel Ridge. Taking a few steps in, she saw a thick bed made from animal skin. A female lay on it, so skinny that she barely resembled a human. Gu Mingming shot Leah a look, and he walked up to check on her condition. Surprisingly, she didn't have any external injuries or internal illnesses. She just looked like she was about to die. Leah looked at Peter and asked, "How long has she been like this?" Peter frowned. "She has been like this since the end of the monsoon season. She refused to eat and has been starving." Gu Mingming instinctively glanced at Elvis. Elvis's expression was indifferent, and he didn't react at all. He really treated this female as a stranger. Gu Mingming sighed. "You guys go out first. I want to talk to her." Elvis surveyed the surroundings. After confirming that this female was alone, he didn't have anything to worry about. He turned to leave first. Peter was worried but had no other choice but to follow. After everyone left, Gu Mengmeng sat beside the female. I am Gu Mengmeng. I am Elvis's partner. The female's eyes brightened at that. Her first reaction was to look at the cave entrance. But Elvis had already walked far away. She couldn't even see his back. There was a moment of disappointment, but it wasn't too obvious. She just lowered her head and didn't say a word. Shall I call Elvis in and let him talk to you? Gu Mengmeng probed. The female seemed to hesitate for a moment before shaking her head. I don't have the face to see him. As long as he is alive, that's enough. All mothers were the same. How could they not dote on their own children? Gu Mengmeng saw that the female was willing to talk about Elvis, so she continued asking. Elvis has never been willing to tell me about his childhood, but I am actually quite curious. If you are willing, why don't you tell me about Elvis when he was young? The female's gaze dimmed. Her eyelids drooped, and even her fingertips trembled. His childhood was a disaster. You shouldn't have brought him back here. It wasn't easy for him to escape. Thinking about how Elvis and his father met, Gu Mengmeng could almost understand what the so-called disaster was about. But I heard that you're very sick. We can't just leave you to die. After all, you are Elvis's mother, Gu Mengmeng said. The female closed her eyes slowly, and a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye onto the beast's skin. Elvis, perhaps he wished that he never had a mother like me. You guys go, don't worry about me. This is the price I should pay. Gu Mengmeng did not understand what she meant. She just felt that the teardrop was really sad. Maybe you can tell me about your difficulties. Maybe I can help you. The female shook her head. You won't agree. No one can save me. I'm already very satisfied to know that Elvis is safe and sound before I die. I can die without regrets. Chapter 798. The female was clearly smiling, but her face was filled with despair. Why? Gu Mengmeng didn't understand. She could understand if she had wanted to die from the torment and humiliation she had suffered when she was kidnapped by the stray beasts. Now Elvis was already 16 years old. If she wanted to die from the humiliation, wasn't that too long a reaction? Peter's attitude towards this female was not the same as a normal stray beast's attitude towards a female he had kidnapped. She could tell from the place she lived and Peter's willingness to risk his life to snatch the kiss of the ocean for her. Not to mention her current level of power, just the presence of Elvis and Wabi alone was enough to put him in a perilous situation. For him to be willing to risk his life for her. Gu Mengmeng didn't believe that he didn't treat her well. So Gu Mengmeng just couldn't understand why she suddenly didn't want to live. Do you know what despair is? The female spoke slowly. Her voice was as soft as a feather being blown away by the wind. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't even be able to hear her voice. Despair? Gu Mengmeng didn't have a deep understanding of this word. In the modern world, she was the kind of person whose grandmother didn't care for her and uncle didn't love her. When she was 4 years old, her father had an affair and married a young mistress, forcing her mother to divorce. When she was 6 years old, her mother brought her along to remarry. Then, she began a long life of watching her mother suffer domestic abuse because she was a burden. Every day, she would tremble all over at the sound of the door. She was truly terrified. But this kind of life only lasted until she was 13 years old. Her stepfather could no longer tolerate an extra person in the house, so she was chased out. Holding her 2-year-old brother in her arms, Mom chose the latter between her and her family. Many people said she was pitiful, deserving of sympathy and pity. But she didn't think so. There were curves in life and it wouldn't always go down. When you were extremely unlucky, you would always be able to live on. So she tried her best to find a place where she could work without identification. Even if the pay was low, as long as food and lodging were provided. Although it was tough, she still felt that her life was getting better day by day. Despair was never a word that existed in her dictionary. After transmigrating to the beast deity, she was very flustered and did not know what to do. However, Elvis and Leah had given her more warmth and love than the accumulated 18 years of being together in the modern world. Although there would always be problems, she had never doubted the happiness she had. So, what kind of despair would make this female give up her life? It was a long and slow process of torture. During this process, every second was torture. Your stomach would constantly challenge your determination to die. But even so, she actually endured for nearly half a year. Chapter 799. After that, I even started to persuade Peter to stay. In order to prevent him from hurting my males, I even took the initiative to seduce him. The female's gaze remained blank, as if she was narrating someone else's story in the third person. It would not hurt so much if it had nothing to do with her. It was then that I became pregnant with Elvis. At the mention of Elvis, the female instinctively looked towards the entrance of the cave. Unfortunately, there was nothing there. Although I did not love Peter, it was my first pregnancy after all. I was still very happy, but Peter was forcing me to choose between my children and my only remaining companion. He said that if I wanted to keep my partner, I had to mate with him until the child was miscarried. If I wanted to keep my child, then he had to leave this cave immediately until I gave birth. But the price was that the 2 remaining marks on my body would disappear. Gu Mingming frowned. She could understand if she said that she could not tolerate other males because she was too possessive. But wasn't it too perverted to mate until the child was miscarried? After all, it was his own flesh and blood in that womb. The female seemed to have seen Gu Mingming's expression, or rather, she did not care about Gu Mingming's reaction. She just needed an outlet to vent all the emotions that she had not dared to express all these years. I was ultimately selfish. I wanted to keep my child. So that night, the 2 marks on my chest disappeared at the same time. Even though I kept praying for them to escape, they still died. For the sake of the child in my womb, I forced myself to live on. I had to live on. So no matter how much I vomited or how much pain I was in, I gritted my teeth and persevered. But when my child was not even a month old, he took them all away. I was imprisoned in this cave, unable to see the light of day. In order to see my child, I gave up my pride and everything to please him. But all I got in return was one nightmare after another. Out of the 6 wolf pups, only Elvis survived. He kept using Elvis to threaten me. As long as I showed the slightest sign of disobedience, he would torture Elvis. I did not even dare to die. During the rainy season, I finally knew that my Elvis was so strong that he could no longer hurt me easily. I could finally be at ease. Finally, I am free. He killed my partner, killed my son, imprisoned me here and tortured me. And after so many years, even my hatred has been worn away. True despair is when I don't even have the desire to kill him for revenge. There's nothing in this world that I'm reluctant to part with anymore. Be it love or hate, there's nothing left. Gu Mingming quietly listened to her finish recounting the past, not interrupting in the middle. Until she had finished, she slowly closed her eyes, looking as if her heart was as still as water and only wished for death. Gu Mingming then tested the waters. Maybe I can bring you away. Bring you to Saint Nazaire to live with me and Elvis. In this case, are you willing? The female's eyelashes fluttered. Gu Mingming's words were like a pebble thrown into the calm lake in her heart, causing ripples to form. Chapter 800. That's right, given her current condition. Even if she ate properly, she might not survive the winter, much less looking like she was begging for death. Elvis and I have 4 sons. It's a pity we didn't bring them along this time. Don't you want to meet them? Gu Mingming continued trying to persuade her. The female's lips curled up slightly, as if she was comforted. But she didn't say a word. Instead, she looked like she could be at ease. Gu Mingming held the female's hand gently. She had seen so many battles between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law in television dramas, but never imagined that her first meeting with her mother-in-law would be to persuade her not to commit suicide. Perhaps her body was really weak. After speaking so much, she had already fallen asleep from exhaustion. Gu Mingming pulled up the beast's skin and covered her up before leaving the cave. Elvis seemed to have become impatient from waiting. Just as he was about to go berserk, he finally saw her coming out from inside, and his tightly furrowed brows relaxed. He scooped her into his arms and hugged her tightly. Only then did he feel at ease. Peter looked into the cave with concern in his eyes. Even though he couldn't see the female from this angle. Gu Mingming said. She said a lot and is very weak now. She has already fallen asleep. Peter was taken aback. He stared at Gu Mingming in disbelief for a long time. He said doubtfully, She spoke to you? Gu Mingming nodded. Peter was so agitated that he almost cried. She's willing to speak. It's good that she's willing to speak. She hasn't spoken for months. No matter what I do, she won't say a single word. Gu Mingming really didn't understand. Since Peter loved her so much, why did he do such cruel things to hurt her? What was his motive? Lower your voice. She just fell asleep. Before Gu Mingming finished her sentence, Peter was already nodding and keeping his mouth shut, not daring to make a sound. Gu Mingming wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and gestured for him to walk out. Peter wanted to ask more about the female, so he naturally followed. When they were far enough away, Gu Mingming asked Elvis to stop. She then frowned and sized Peter up. What did she say to you? Peter desperately wanted to know every word she said. Even if it was just a paraphrase, it would be a great comfort to him. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and did not speak. She just stared at Peter. Wabi said lazily, I'm tired. I'll find a place to sleep. Wake me up when it's time to eat. Ian rolled his eyes at Gu Mingming with a face that looked like he was about to die. It was obvious that he was still holding a grudge against her for releasing her pressure outside and causing him to fall. Without saying a word, he left with Wabi. Leah sighed. Although he was also Gu Mingming's partner now, this was clearly an old matter of the Elvis family, and it was not convenient for him to listen in. Hence, he kissed Gu Mingming's little face and said, We haven't had lunch yet. I'll go prepare something delicious for you. Auntie looks very weak, so I'll prepare some good food for her. Gu Mingming understood everyone's consideration, so she nodded and returned a kiss on Lee's cheek. Thank you. Leah lightly scratched Gu Mingming's little nose and smiled. Silly girl, why are you thanking me? You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.